In this video, we'll be looking at the contribution of a research article. This is the first thing that you should look at. Before you just start reading the article, try to find out what the contribution is and how that relates to your research. The contribution is what a particular study adds to the field. Every research article has to add something new to the field of study. Something that has never been studied before. Something that's been studied but not very well known or not a very clear explanation. Or in engineering, something that has not been developed before. Or perhaps something that's been developed but you're improving. And this again is the goal for iGEM, to develop something new or to improve something that has been developed before. It's sort of like the difference between an explorer and a surveyor. In science, you have explorers, people that just go where no one has ever gone before. And they mark a trail and they make a map. And then later the surveyor comes along and checks all the maps that have been made and tries to lay out the best route for making a road or some other structure. And so there are 4 places in an article that you can find the contribution, and some are clearer than others, but it usually appears in some form in the title, the abstract, at the end of the introduction, and the conclusion. So let's look first at the title. Ideally, a title, at least in engineering, should contain the general area of research and the specific contribution of the research. For example, there's an article in Chemical Engineering that says the activity and durability of platinum nickel nanocage electrocatalysts in proton exchange membrane fuel cells. Okay, so the proton exchange membrane fuel cells, that's the general area of research. There are a lot of people working on these fuel cells. But this platinum nickel nanocage electrocatalyst, that's the specific topic of this research. And preferably, this specific topic should be at the beginning because that's what's going to catch people's attention.
Wow, this title is very long. Sometimes in research articles, there is a word limit for the title.
It's true, and it differs again for different fields. In electrical engineering, you usually have titles that are about 10 to maybe 15 words. In chemical engineering, they can be up to 30 words, which you would never see in social science.
In social science and humanities, sometimes we can be very creative in how we title our research paper. For example, I wrote a paper on a tale of 2 diphthongs, I and ow. So I used a tale of 2 cities as an illustration, a metaphor to entitle my paper to attract attention.
Because those 2 diphthongs are used in 2 different villages.
Yes.
Right. And then in the abstract usually begins with 1 or 2 sentences about the motivation. Why do we want to do this? Why is this work important? Why should the reader be interested in it? And then right after that usually is where it states the research goal or the contribution. Something like, in this paper, we, or this paper, this research studies something. And then after that, the second half of the abstract will be about the methods, the results, the discussion.
Again, it depends on the number of words is allowed for each abstract. So an abstract is very much like an advertisement. If you want to attract your customers' attention, you need to know what to put in the abstract so they know whether they want to read or buy this product.
Right. So a conference abstract in particular is usually or often very short, maybe even 50 words. And then you don't have room for all of this. You just put in something to catch people's attention, to get them into your session. But a research abstract is usually longer, 200, 300, sometimes even up to 1,000 words. And then you put in more details in that abstract. But still, the structure is quite often very similar from one to another. It's just a matter of how much detail. Now, some abstracts are what are called structured abstracts. These are common in medicine, education, some other fields, where they'll have fixed titles for each section of the abstract, and the authors have to match those. In this one, for instance, you can see the background, the methods, the results, the conclusion. The background, the first sentence talks about motivation. Why do we want to do this? And then at the end of the background, the last sentence there says, to clarify this, we compared the effects of EPA only, DHA only, and adjusted for one another. So that's their contribution. That's a hint again at the research goal of this article. Now, again, not all abstracts are structured. This is the same field, but a different journal, and yet you still see the same basic order of things in the abstract. The first sentence talks about the motivation. The increasing incidence of metabolic syndrome encourages studies. And then the second sentence gives the goal. In the present study, we explore the effect of EPA and DHA supplementation. Then the third sentence goes on with the methods, then the results, and the last sentence talks about the discussion. So you have the same basic structure. And if you know that, you know where to look for things and find out whether this is suitable for your work. Now, the main place that the research goal is stated is usually the last paragraph of the introduction. Here's the last paragraph of one of the articles I just showed you. It says, the aim of the present study was to evaluate the effects of supplementation with EPA-DHA mixtures. So again, that states very clearly the goal of this particular research. And then there's another sentence that says, to the best of our knowledge, the present study was the first to investigate this. And again, that's very common in some fields, not all, to indicate that there's a gap in the research. Again, that's more common, I think, in social science than in engineering.
In research, in social sciences, we need to identify the gap. And we also need to tell the readers, to my knowledge, or to the best of our knowledge, no research has ever been conducted on this particular topic.
And you see that also in science, but again, not so much in engineering, because there's no gap. Everybody is working on the same thing, and you're just trying to present some sort of an improvement on the current design. Now again, there are other types of articles, and the contributions may or may not be in the same place. With secondary research and conference papers, often it's pretty much the same structure. With letters, it will be similar, but it may say in this letter, or in this correspondence, in this report, rather than in this paper. Review articles don't really have a research goal. Again, they have a goal, but the goal is to review the present literature. So it will often say, in this review, we summarize, we compare, we evaluate, we categorize, we do something with this current body of existing research.
So I think that the only difference between primary and secondary research in terms of its structure is in secondary research, we don't usually have a very clear section which is called methods.
But you have instead something that talks about sources of data.
Yes.
Right. So that sources of data serves the same purpose as a method section in primary research. Now, again, there are different ways that this may be stated. In social sciences, the contribution is often stated as research questions. In engineering, it's more often stated as an aim. But these, again, are things that you'll learn to recognize depending on the particular field, the particular journal that you're reading at the time. Each field is a little bit different, but it's important to learn the structure and learn the journals that you typically work with, because that will help you find the contribution of the article, recognize the destination. Where is this article going? and then you can figure out, is that where I want to go or not?
Exactly. It's very much like looking for the jewels, the precious stone. You need to know where to dig, where to find it. Now, let me ask you, if we read a joke, where we can find the punchline?
At the very beginning.
Of course not. That defeats the purpose.
Oh, well.
So you cannot laugh until the very end. The punchline is at the end.
Oh, that's why you can't tell a joke, because you start laughing at the beginning.
Exactly.
Okay, in the next tape, we'll talk more about the structure of the sections, so that you can get more details on where to find other things other than the main contribution of the article.